When talking about human exploitation, this case might serve as a showcase. Welcome everyone. Today I invite you to explore with me an instance of human exploitation broadcasted and monetized on YouTube for years. An internet phenomenon turned into a sickening Truman Show. A story which horrifying end unfolds right now. If you're interested in how a candidate for a city mayor became an internet celebrity, how to earn thousands of dollars by investing just $100 a week, and why drinking yellow liquids is not going to earn you any respect, then make yourself comfy and let's have a cup of absurdity. Before we start, a disclaimer about viewer discretion. This video contains disturbing information, and due to an ongoing censorship campaign, there aren't many photos or clips, so you can simply stick to listening. Also, this story is full of characters with names that may sound weird to the non-Polish speakers, so wherever possible, I will use lore-friendly nicknames for them. And if you're wondering what I mean by lore-friendly, I promise that everything will become clear as we go on. Our tale begins on 21st of January 1963, in the city of Kętrzyn, Poland. On that day, Krzysztof Kononowicz, whom we'll address as Konon from now on, was born into a family repatriated to Poland from the territory of current-day Belarus. His father, Bronisław, was a prisoner of the Soviet prison camp system for 5 years. After regaining freedom, he married his wife, Leonarda, after which they moved to Poland in 1958, where they finally settled in the city of Białystok in 1975, moving into a wooden house at School Street number 17. This is the address, which in 40 years will become a stage to one of the most absurd live shows in internet's history. The family led a humble life, but worked hard for their bread. Apart from Konon, the couple had 2 other sons, eldest Bogumił and Marian, who died in infancy. Konon finished school becoming a driver/mechanic and worked as a truck driver and a janitor at the city hall. He also helped his parents run a small farm and raise livestock. At this time, he also showed an inclination towards politics, as he joined Solidarność. There are many doubts about his membership because while he owns the correct documents, the date of his joining is before the party even formed. Most likely the actual date of joining, in 1990, was tampered with and changed into 1980. Why? Let's just say it was most likely caused by Konon's own narcissism and pathological lying. These are the first glances into his flawed character, which later in the video we'll try to explore more deeply. So we can see that he was pretty busy early in life. As with most things, however, this was not meant to last. In 1994, Konon lost his job and lived with his parents and brother. The family ran a small transport company in which all family members contributed. Their financial situation was not great, but they managed to stay afloat. After a few years, Konon began his political campaign. In 2002, he left the Solidarność party and planned to run for the position of the mayor of the city, but he was too late and arrived with the documents after the candidate registration was already over. Undeterred, he tried to apply for the position of the regional chief of police, unsurprisingly without success. The death of his father in 2004 caused the family's material situation to devolve further, as they had to survive almost purely on social benefits. They ran a small farm, which as one of the last in the area was raising pigs. Konon often toured the city's canteens and nearby border guard base for the kitchen slop and leftovers, which were then fed to the animals. Thanks to that, he became locally recognizable and gained a few mean nicknames, like Major Slop. These years also brought a mental breakdown of his elder brother Bogusław. Supposedly what happened was that in his younger years, Bogusław got involved in a violent altercation, which ended with him being hit in the head. This in turn resulted in a permanent debilitation of his mental qualities. In later years of his life, he suffered many psychotic episodes, involving running around the streets while swinging an axe, and cutting Konon's hand nearly in two. While he was not having an episode, he was working hard around the house and farm, which allowed Konon to focus on his budding political career. I could get into even more details, but for now, I don't want to overstretch this video too much, since it will probably be quite long regardless. So that's a quick and basic draw of what the main character of our story, Krzysztof Kononowicz, went through in his life before he became an internet icon, or at least Polish internet icon. It's pretty obvious he didn't have a great life, but don't worry, it gets worse. Much worse. And although I say that, the beginnings were anything but. His short-lived political career and a sudden spike in popularity could be interpreted as quite positive. yet it was the proverbial high place from which the fall hurts even more. The story of his internet popularity begins in 2005, when Konon went to meet a local politician, Marek Czerniawski, whose office often handed out financial help for the needy. It's there where he was roped into a political campaign and helped in menial jobs, like hanging posters and handing out flyers. During that time, another local politician, Adam Trzetkowicz, noticed him and offered him a place on his party's candidate list for the mayor of the city in the upcoming 2006 local election on behalf of the party KWW Podlasie of the 21st century. Why would he do that? Well, he needed candidates to fill up the list, and of course Konon believed it was his big chance, so he eagerly took part in every aspect of the campaign and even proposed a change to the party's name to Prawo I Godność, abbreviated to PIG. Fortunately, the flawed change was not implemented. That is when the first bout of Konon's internet popularity happened. Remember, the year was 2006. The internet was quite a new thing, especially in Poland, and viral content was in its infancy as well. So when 1.2 million people watched Konon's candidate speech in 3 days, it was considered by many to be an anomaly. One that surprised no one more than its creators. In the speech, delivered on the viral video, he lays out a plan for the city if he's elected mayor. Let me give you a quick recap of his proposals. According to him, he should become the mayor so that there is no banditry, that there is no thievery, that there is no nothing, that there is no bureaucracy, that there is no ragamuffin. His program also included such propositions as forbidding selling alcohol to minors, which was already illegal, a free internet for everyone in the area, and fighting drugs and cigarettes in hospitals. Those bizarre postulates, coupled with stunted, chaotic speech patterns, defective syntax, and aided by the speaker's sloppy appearance, caused massive virality of the video. Soon after, millions of people were making fun of Konon, and it was not limited to the Polish people and media, but also spread to the West, thanks to outlets like Germany's Der Spiegel or Australia's The Sydney Morning Herald, which published articles about the candidate, calling him the real-life Borat. The situation was of course misinterpreted by Konon, who took it as a sign of support. As a result, he became more sure of himself than ever and probably made himself believe that he's got the mayoral election in the proverbial pocket. This, as was apparent to any sensible person, was not the case. Konon didn't completely lose, as he came in second to last with 1600 votes, which was about 2% support. Of course, Konon was enraged and demanded a recount in his presence, after which he claimed he earned 9% of votes. And this was most likely a lie, as no one else reported any problems with the vote counts. And not dismayed, Konon demanded the vote to be redone, and argued that the priest from a nearby parish broke the blackout period by mentioning him in his sermon. This motion is of course promptly dismissed. While Konon's political career lay in shambles after such a defeat, his popularity was actually blooming. Adam quickly realized the phenomenon of the man he somewhat controlled, and drove Konon to many events, while charging money for showing him around, taking photos with him, or getting his signature. Meanwhile, as everyone was making fun of Konon, Adam convinced him that all this is the effect of the popular support for him. Konon actually believed in it and attended every event like it was his presidential inauguration. During that time, assisted by Adam, he met with a few important Polish politicians, including a then Prime Minister, Donald Tusk, who was under such an impression of the local political activist that he commented on it in following words, quote, "If I'll have the opportunity, I will not allow such situations to happen. A young, cynical man tries to turn a slightly older, unhappy man into a showcase of Białystok. These political escapades did not fizzle out without actual action being taken. Konon relentlessly tried to apply for various important jobs, like the head of the Polish Football League in 2008, a member of the European Parliament in 2009, and even President of Poland in 2010. In most cases, even the applications for candidacy never saw submission. Despite that, he was a guest in a few television programs and even had a song made about him and played a part in a music video. Of course, everyone besides him was laughing their pants off. In 2008, Konon began the production of videos with help from his party colleague Marek Kulesza. Those videos were mainly focused on social issues, political commentary, and local problems. Due to Konon's weirdness, these videos gained a bit of popularity, and though it cannot be compared to his later viewership. In 2009, he acted in a Polish movie called Ciacho, where he played a lawyer. Apparently his scene had to be redone 5 times, since he wasn't able to remember the text and was forced to improvise. In 2010, the party committee put another person as their candidate in the presidential elections. Conon criticized this decision because of course he wanted to be the candidate himself, and in an act of defiance, he supported Jarosław Kaczyński, who was the center-right-wing candidate at the time. When Mark Czerniawski was put forward as the candidate for the mayor in the same year, saying Konon didn't like it very much would be an understatement. He flew into rage and thus began one of his greatest hobbies, snitching. He wrote denunciation letters about members of his campaign and people from his own party. As a result, he was urgently expelled from the party structures. With his political career utterly and completely finished, he entered a period of greatest difficulties and loss in his life. Later in the year, he revealed his terrible financial situation and asked for donations. His base responded and quite quickly gathered around $1,500, and most of which were then used to pay the overdue bills. Additional funds did little to improve the family's situation, and soon they were back on the brink of total poverty. In 2010, Konon's mother suffered an accident in the kitchen, which resulted in a broken leg. This caused an avalanche of health problems and ended with the death of the poor old woman in September 2011. At this time, due to his worsening mental state, Konon's brother Bogumił stayed in a mental hospital. In early 2013, just over a year later, he also died while in the hospital's care. Official cause of death is choking, although people close to Konon speculate that he was secretly euthanized, a hypothesis which resonated quite well, as many in Poland at the time believed medical personnel to sometimes commit such gruesome acts. Of course, no official investigation was launched. Death of his last living relatives took its toll on Konon. He ate through any money he had, including his brother's funeral funds and his brother's housing funds, which allowed him to vegetate for the next 2 years. This situation is known in the School Street 17 universe as the funeral scandal. Yes, you heard that right. The unbelievable adventures of Konon and people involved with him condense over time in the viewers' minds into a separate universe. In Polish, it's called Uniwersum Szkolnej 17. The name comes from Konon's home address. This place will be referred to as the Wooden House or the Presidential Palace later in the video. The latter name is used because of Konon's insistence to candidate for the highest offices in the country. The community compiled the events, characters and places into massive lore, creating a sort of living story which was freely influenced by the viewers themselves. All the info is currently stored on an entire wiki with thousands of pages, which is maintained and updated non-publicly by people opposed to the current power structure of School Street 17 universe. The link is in the description. This quote-unquote universe gained a huge following, counted in tens and even hundreds of thousands of people, becoming popular not only in Poland itself but also in many Polish communities all over the world. To make things easier to understand, I will refer to the entirety of this lore and content as the universe from now on. Turning human lives into a parallel world show has also resulted in creation of a pseudoscience called Kononowicz, which uncovers, records and compiles facts about the universe and its inhabitants. All the info I gave you until now refers to the old universe, so to speak, and now we move to the modern times. In 2015, Krzysztof Niwiński, who was a friend of people involved with Konon before, contacted him and began to make video blogs starring our main character. He started a YouTube channel called Kononowicz in Oil or Tomatoes and began his directorial career. He is nicknamed the German by Konon, who misspeaks his surname. Those first videos were mostly political rants and testing of canned fish by the dirty and ragged Konon. The very way of recording them intensified the image of his misery, and the low quality further emphasized the desperate situation of the former mayoral candidate. At that time, another character was introduced to the universe. Wojciech Suchodolski, nicknamed Major, became Konon's sidekick and a lingering presence in the Wooden House, apart from the times when he ran away, or stayed in the forest, or was being loaned to other people. Anyway, his appearance in the universe was another big change for Konon, who finally had someone to talk to. Major was at the time a homeless person who had a history of delinquency and serving jail time. He was incarcerated on multiple occasions, mainly for stuff like petty thievery, burglary, and violent altercations, and as a result, he spent 10 years of his life behind the gates of penitentiary establishments. How did they meet? In 2015, Konon went to receive a support package, which were handed out by a charity to the poorest residents. Among those in need was also Major. Konon's friend led him into the queue and, knowing that he was looking for a tenant, he introduced him to Major. The two hit it off quite easily, since one was a self-important, power-craving megalomaniac, and the other was a heavily tried by life multiple offender and an enthusiast of cheap trips. Despite expectations, it was a match made in heaven. Major moved into the presidential palace, where the plan was that he would work around the house instead of paying rent. And while the willingness to work was there, the body was lacking, and any of Major's efforts resulted in a stretched-out, unproductive drudge, which often ended prematurely, with taking a break, usually till nighttime. Major quickly became a part of the video blogs recorded by German, and partook in reviews and commentary. Now that there were two actors available at the wooden house, the ambitions of the channel editor grew, as well as he began to experiment with other video formats. The German is soon dubbed a director, since his videos were obviously recorded with a loose script in mind. The community did not care too much, since it didn't take away the natural spontaneity and provided enough structure to be entertaining. The channel's main content still consisted of food reviews, scandals, and the first openings of the packages mailed by viewers. However, this time, a new type of videos appeared, and those were weird, controversial, or downright absurd scenes played by Major and Konon. One of them gave Major his nickname. In 2014, violent fights erupted on the territory of the country with the blue and yellow flag. The German wanted to weave those events into the fabric of the series, and brought an old Red Army uniform in which Major got dressed, and in the video he claims to be a Major from Bombas, which is obviously a misspelling of the name Donbass. This gave birth not only to the famed nickname, but also to a slew of new nomenclature to jokingly describe things in the universe. For example, Major's food became Bombas cuisine, and his stunted, broken speech was called Bombas language. Another one was a scene where Major, with his face painted black, plays an African person. In the video, Konon and Major talk about snow and bananas, and in the end Konon says, quote, "Let the news come." This caused an outrage and ended up being reported in national television, as well as investigated by the police. Later, this event became known in the universe as the racist scandal. Regarding the packages, this period of the universe's existence is often considered by fans to be the, quote, poor old school street. Konon and Major were grateful for every gift they received, often calling the items godly, which is to show how they considered it, at least partially, to be the consequence of the divine providence watching over them. The phrase godly will later be used often, not only by the characters but also the viewers, to indicate the affiliation of whatever they call by that adjective to the universe. As the series went on, more and more gifts were sent by the viewers to their favorite almost president and Major, whom the fans also dubbed Konon's wife, and this was due to their old married couple dynamic. Anyway, most of those gifts contained long-lasting food products, money, or small souvenirs. Some of them were more creative, like sending a smoke grenade which went off after the box was opened. And there were also the disgusting ones, because of course someone just had to send a jar of feces. Yes, it happened, and yes, it was opened on the video. And yes, it did spill, and if that wasn't bad enough, it happened more than once. Despite the seemingly deep religious undertones in the universe, Konon was a simple Catholic who used his faith only to present himself in the best possible light. He did not hesitate to pray for harm to come to his enemies, and had a complete lack of religious knowledge. He did not even visit the graves of his parents and brother, which he had close by, and was so stingy with funds, he never carved the dates of birth and death on the tombstones. Similarly, Major proclaimed himself a Catholic as well, although he could not say any prayers correctly, and he only really knew one, which he most likely composed himself, and which was different every time. He often referred to the teachings of John Paul II, whose numerous images hanged in their shared room, although in terms of feigned piety, he was no match for Konon. Major visited church once every blue moon, but only to record videos. He posed as a Puritan who did not swear on Sunday and did not eat meat on Friday. However, the 10 Commandments were put aside when it was necessary to curse Conon like a filthy rag, or when there was a godly sausage in the fridge. As I mentioned before, those shows of fake religiousness were also present in the decor conventions of the palace, and most notably the presidential bedroom. The walls were full of holy paintings, including Jesus, Holy Virgin Mary, Pope John Paul II, and Conon himself. Of course, Conon's portrait as a saint was sent by one of the viewers, and in his primitive, selfish faith, he not only didn't see anything wrong with it, he was in fact overjoyed. Pretending to be such a holy person ties in with his pathological lying. As his mental illness progressed, his stories reached absurd heights. He claimed to have had a private audience with the Pope, he claimed to have written a new catechism for the Catholic Church, placing himself in it as a part of the Holy Quartet. He also loved to brag about his skills in stove making and mechanics. As for the validity of those claims, on 2 separate occasions, in 2012 and 2020, his wooden house caught fire after he failed to properly clean the furnace. As for his mechanical talents, they have been shown on many videos and mainly consist of burning on a cold engine until it falls to pieces. Other examples of Conon's vivid imagination, which verged on a border of hallucination, are him having a gift of prophecy, which he wouldn't use for free, an ability to cast curses, him building a children's playground by himself, and riding an elephant in northern Poland. Of course, these are just the examples. The full list of such stories is long and probably incomplete. But yeah, he was such a talent at weaving the web of fantasies that he got caught lying all the time, which, to tell the truth, didn't baffle him even a bit. So at least he was consistent in his inconsistency. As you might have guessed, Conon is, officially, by court, recognized as a person mildly mentally handicapped. Besides that, he also suffers from an unspecified mental illness. Another manifestation of his usual state was snitching, which we touched a bit before. Conon has written denunciation letters about everyone and everything for a long time, so much so that it caused extreme hostility of his environment towards him. In his own opinion, this is a method of building authority. He threatens his enemies with 25 years in prison, with the alternative being a fine of $20. He even snitched on his editors and bragged about it in their presence. Conon even had his own notebook in which he wrote down the identity cards and license plates of every viewer visiting the universe. He is a regular guest at the police station where allegedly a special archive has been created to document his informant activities. Major, whom he reported for alcoholism and sniffing nitro, called him an oppressive prick. Going back to the events in the universe, let me present to you a few incidents that happened during those years of poor old School Street. One time, Conon was attacked and robbed by 3 men who he hired to do renovations. While the beating goes down, Major jumps out the window and runs away. Conon has been quite severely beaten, as his return to health takes about a month. The culprits were caught shortly after the deed. On another occasion, Conon burned a flag of a well-known Middle Eastern organization, which is named after a certain religion. Another time, the fans sent a machete to Conon as a gift, and after that, the inhabitants tried surströmming. Need some more? One day Conon received a seemingly official letter summoning him to appear at the local crematory for the purpose of changing his physical form into a powdered one. On another, he and Major argued over who soiled their underwear more times. As you can see, the content of the channel was refined and delightfully diverse. There is so much stuff there that if I even tried to list it all, not to mention describe it, we would be here for a long time. So instead, I will now move to the important secondary characters who made their appearance during those years, while covering the parts of the story in which they participated. John Rodo made his debut in the universe in a series of films by the German in October 2018. Almost half a year later, Conon gave a speech on film in which he asked John to move into his house in Major's place, and by March, he appeared in the palace as a probable future roommate, and Major was clearly irritated about it. And next day he was tidying up the yard and in one day did more work than Major had done during the previous 3.5 years of stay. As he himself claimed, in 1994, John spent 9 months in Gyumri in Armenia, where he worked on rebuilding a hospital and residential houses destroyed by the 1988 earthquake. He claimed that he also witnessed the fighting between Armenians and Azeris and the war crimes there. These events left a permanent mark on his psyche, and he has not gotten rid of the trauma they caused. He was also a blood donor and donated 35 liters of blood. John's career at School Street did not last long, as he was kicked out of his position after a drinking session, during which he passed out in the middle of the room. He has soon returned due to his hard-working nature in order to help in everyday jobs. According to Major, Konon paid for his help with alcohol. John became a frequent visitor in the presidential palace. Among other times, he showed up at the residence at the end of April, and during the live show, he performed with Major and gave him a name-day kiss on the cheek, which became known as the kissing scandal. John, after returning to live in his family home, suddenly started to quickly lose weight and energy. He was terrified of ending up in a hospital, so he tried to self-medicate by switching from alcohol to sugar water. This obviously didn't help, and soon he was so weak that he had to be carried around the house, yet he still denied any proposition of calling for help. On August 2, 2020, John lost consciousness. Despite the resistance of his family, the person who was in their apartment at the time called for an ambulance. In the hospital, John's condition did not improve. He was very weak, had anemia, and a low level of hemoglobin. Then, the next day in the morning, John passed away. We do not know what exactly happened to him, as his body was not autopsied. He was an overall well-liked character, due to his lack of laziness and, despite his love for intoxicating drinks, he rarely caused serious arguments. His death is considered by many fans to be an end of an era in School Street history. His grave was a destination of 4 trips by Konon, and only once did it actually end successfully. This gave birth to rumors about a curse under which the grave was supposedly put to prevent Konon from reaching it. The first attempt to visit ended early because both Konon and Major had defecated while in Barney's car. The second attempt was thwarted by an accident in which Konon crashed his car. The third time, on the first anniversary of John's death, Konon reached the cemetery and was directed to the wrong grave, over which he lamented lengthily. And who is the aforementioned Barney? He's a man in his 60s, who followed the fate of Konon from the beginning of his media and political career. He first appeared in the universe in winter of 2019, when he brought coal to Konon, which won his favor. From that moment on, he fell into a cycle of appearing on School Street and constantly cutting his ties with it. He also appeared from time to time to save Konon from oppression or from the clutches of death itself, which was documented in all 3 diabetes scandals. And you may ask, what were the diabetes scandals? And you'd be right to ask. You see, to say that Konon did not care about his diet would be a gross understatement. He devoured huge amounts of food, which is also associated with uncontrolled number 2s. During his life, he has consumed mostly very low quality food, including huge amounts of sugar and fat. The healthiest food he had pleasure to consume is probably canned fish. He stuffed his stomach with anything barely edible he could get his hands on, and poured hectoliters of milk and soda, which eventually caused him to develop diabetes in 2019. Konon then had a seizure and laid on the couch with his eyes rolled back, groaning. The panicked Major then called Barney, who came as soon as he could, even though he had about 150 miles to drive. And only after coming there, he called an ambulance, as nobody did anything before he arrived. The milk is a giant part of Konon's life, and earned him the nickname of Milk Golem. According to eyewitnesses, he could drink as much as 2.5 gallons or 10 liters of it per day. He did it while simultaneously claiming that the milk is healthy and won't kill him. Of course, as we know, milk contains lactose, which is a sugar. That was one of the main causes behind Konon's diabetes, alongside soda and sweet snacks, which he consumed in terrifying quantities as well. Remember, he mostly got them for free as gifts from viewers. His health issues weren't helped by his lack of hygienic habits. On the contrary, Konon's usual state of being could be considered an antithesis to hygiene itself. as it seemed to be the most surreal concept in his dictionary. For example, getting dirty from head to toe in coal was too trivial of an excuse to take a bath for him. Moldy scraps of food, unwashed clothes, and unintentional discharges which happen from time to time have coagulated into an unique state of existence, where his smell could, according to witnesses, be sliced with a knife. And many fans actually were taking some of it as a souvenir after visiting Konon, most of them unwillingly, as they complained that the smell stuck to their clothes for weeks. Okay, so with that explained, let's go back to the secondary characters. Another one of them is Mexicano. At the beginning of 2017, he met Konon at the store and suggested that they record a video together. Konon agreed to cooperate because at the time he was at odds with the German. He nicknamed his new editor Mexicano, after the name of the city district where he lived, which was colloquially called Mexico. Mexicano continued with the established format, creating daily video blogs about the life of the universe. He recalled that at the beginning of the cooperation, he had to sit in the palace in a jacket because there was no coal for heating. Thanks to an appeal in one of the videos, it was possible to obtain several bags of this priceless material, which won him the favor of Major and Konon. Soon the channel was doing better than ever, and the money stream increased. However, after publishing a controversial video, the channel was banned and removed. Mexicano was not spared and was kicked out of his position for the first time shortly after. Unable to come to terms with the loss of fame, he began to record urban jungle survival videos, where he would eat raw meat and drink urine. By the way, he did it twice, because the first time he didn't catch it on camera. And the joke in the community is that the once filtered beer straight from the tap still had about 4% alcohol. This desperate clawing at scraps of fame did not land well with the viewers. His channel started losing subscriptions, and so he started to invent and deliver speeches against the inhabitants of the palace. This went on for a long time and culminated in an attack of Konon and Major, who drove to Mexicano's house as he fled. Currently, he runs a YouTube channel on which he often comments on the happenings at School Street, does treasure hunting with metal detector, occasionally travels around Europe, and talks about the past. He stopped drinking after being told that his pancreas was on its last legs, and has been sober ever since. Generally, it's thought that he was able to turn his life around, but he never got close to the level of popularity he had when he took an active role in the universe. Fyodor is a border guard who took over Mexicano's role in editing the universe. He was an editor who enjoyed a very positive reception among the viewers of the universe. All this was due to his ability to create comedic situations, concern for Konon's life despite the feud between them, strong character, and not giving in to pressure. He also introduced the first mobile streams to School Street 17. During his time as the editor-in-chief, he resolved the drama between Konon and Mexicano and hosted a legendary stream which included all of the characters from the universe at once. His work was characterized by a lack of any censorship and inhibitions. Fyodor left his position as a result of an argument with Konon during his birthday party in January 2020. Him leaving the universe was, unfortunately, a straw that broke the camel's back. Now, free to do as he pleased, and not confined to the shadows anymore, the grey eminence of the School Street was able to take control. Watching this content today, after knowing everything that happened later, feels like taking a dive in the sewer. Though I took this dive for educational purposes, it was still a disgusting affair. Of course, most of the content I used for research is still, as of this day, available on YouTube and various other sites, so if anyone wishes to take a look themselves, feel free to do it. I do, however, want to issue a strong warning. What you'll see there will be people with dependencies and disabilities being urged by people just slightly more intelligent than them to commit deeds derogatory to their dignity in exchange for literal chump change. So you can consider yourself warned now. At the end of 2018, a longtime fan of the universe, Sławomir, who we'll call Ginger, showed up at School Street 17 for the first time. He was introduced as a tech support and was supposed to take care of the earnings, setting up live streams, channel moderation, things like that. From the very beginning though, his strange behavior has attracted the attention of the viewers. He's also a CEO of a public company by the name of Exploitation, and despite the nickname, his hair isn't red. What's funny, on the surface his company deals in electronic equipment. One of their auctions at a popular Polish site included a hard drive, clearly labeled Major. It was priced at $6. Before we continue with the story, let me give you some info on Ginger. During his time in the universe, the fans were able to gather an overwhelming amount of damning data, both on his character and conduct. His character was clearly shown to the viewers during his first YouTube live, when he got so drunk that he vomited all over the carpet. During another, the same performed alone, he locked his wife in a room so that she wouldn't interrupt his stream, and claimed she's alright because she has sweets to eat. On yet another show, he asked John Rodo if he would lick whipped cream of a male organ. So as you see, he is a wildcard in the universe, and it wouldn't be so bad if it wasn't accompanied by an unstoppable desire for control. His actions in the universe have split the fans into two camps, latex and anti-latex. Funny names, I know. These come from Major's tech guy nicknamed Radimon, who enjoyed wearing leather and latex outfits. So the latex group are Ginger's supporters, who believe he's helping the poor main characters, and the anti-latex are the ones who oppose them, while arguing that the pseudo-help of Ginger and his partners is actively killing the universe metaphorically and the people literally. And now going back to our main story, Ginger shows up as a tech guy and slowly spreads his influence. The first sign of the trouble brewing were the CCTV cameras, which began appearing at School 317 in large numbers. One might think that they were installed for security, but strangely, whenever something bad happened at the presidential residence, like the fans getting sprayed or cars being covered in feces, the cameras did not help in identifying the culprits at all. It's no wonder then that the monitoring system quickly turned into a system of control. Ginger, from hundreds of kilometers away, had a 24-hour access to visual and audio live feed from the entire property, both inside and outside the house. Apart from the cameras, he also installed spying and tracking software on electronic devices. This became apparent when he found Major's lair, and that is a place where he stayed during his escapades into the forest, their purpose being intense nasal tasting of aromatic chemical solvents. There are also many rumors about Ginger. One of the most popular is that he steals clothes of the presidential pair and keeps them in a zip bag, for them not to lose their aroma, then sells them on the site to fans. This theory is supported by a clip he uploaded, in which he opens such a zip bag and inhales the odor. Another rumor is that he's a benzodiazepine addict, as evidenced by his reaction to alcohol, as when mixed, it induces vomiting. And just for the info, Ginger set up a new channel called Milky Man, on which all of the videos were uploaded. Him, his wife, Jack, and a guy called Cosno are collectively referred to as the Milky Man crew. In August 2020, Conon, during an impromptu sermon in the garden, put a crown of thorns on his head and declared himself a martyr. The reason for that was Major smelling the solvent and everyone around him stabbing his painful heart with daggers, wanting to put him in the ground. At the same time, he claimed that he acquired the gift of turning wine into milk. Lamenting, he took upon himself the sins of all Poland and agreed to suffer for them like the Son of God did. And he actually really did all that on video. Anyway, God quickly fulfilled his request and just next month gave him a severe attack of diabetes, from which Conon was barely saved, as well as received a bloody stigma on his rump. That wasn't a stigma, it was a bed sore. On 10th of September, he landed in a hospital. He was diagnosed with a number of ailments: type 2 diabetes, obesity, and high blood pressure. His stay at the hospital lasted for 51 days, during which he was forced to wear a diaper and use a catheter. Due to those quite necessary arrangements, he often asked to be released, but the personnel, conscious of his state, denied his requests. On 30th of October, he left the hospital and returned to his house, where he found Major and Jack of Dog Aaron completely sloshed. That second guy was another new editor. In order to better control the lives of his protégés, Ginger installed his own fellows as editors and overseers. First person to take the mantle is a guy called Jack of Dog Aaron, called that because, well, he had a dog named Aaron. Even though Jack's first appearance was in 2017, only after striking a deal with Ginger, he became a full-time editor at the Palace. Due to his passiveness in filmmaking, he's sometimes called a tripod, meaning he only held a camera to immortalize the unfolding events, while not influencing them in any way. As Ginger's lackey, he was heavily criticized by the fans. He secretly filmed private conversations and arguments, and one time, after consuming a lot of strong beverages, vomited on the carpet. Another time, in winter, so it was quite cold out, Jack told Major to stay out in his forest lair for the entire night, because he was worried that other editors who were visiting School Street that day would be able to film content with the fume junkie. Good thing is that this conversation was caught on camera, as at one point, Major started recording his nitro-tripping escapades. Fortunately, Major survived the night and came back the next day. The content changed to more sensational, and a VIP group was created, where fans could pay for access to more materials. Every stream contained begging for donations, and all of the ad money went through Ginger. His control became so overwhelming that the dependency of the characters turned into near slavery. We still don't know if it was a carefully crafted plan or simply taking advantage of the appearing opportunities, but Ginger's dictatorial ambitions began to shine from the very beginning of his activity. The same cannot be said for another editor, Pavel. He is a middle-aged man who lives with his family nearby and works as a paramedic. He has known Konon since his memorable visit to the ER with his sick mother in 2012. In 2021, Pavel posted his first videos from the universe. His work received positive reviews from viewers because he was one of the few editors who did not adopt a submissive and passive attitude towards the almost president and asked uncomfortable questions. As an opponent of Ginger's, he was one of the few people who tried to help Konon and Major in bettering their situation. His efforts have ultimately ended in failure, which led to the slow but final downfall of the universe in the following years. Of course, the vital question is that if all these events were happening before the eyes of hundreds of thousands of people, why wouldn't someone do something about it? And the answer is, they did, or at least tried to. Lucas was the episodic editor of the universe. Currently, he functions as an activist in the case of long-term abuse of Konon. He's an ex-soccer player, YouTuber, and a radical anti-latex, leading the anti-latex movement. He had 4 controversial charity streams to his credit, the most popular of which raised around $4,500. The money was donated to an orphanage. At the very beginning of the latex takeover of School Street 17, Lucas, with the help of Pavel, came to School Street where, during his visit, he explained to the inhabitants how Ginger and Jack are getting rich of them and their videos. The resident learned the truth about how Ginger was spying on them, including by attaching a GPS to Major's backpack. Lucas, with the newly made aware Konon and Major, decided to take away the access to the cameras from the Milky Man crew and uninstall the TeamViewer application from their laptops. The presidential pair expressed their willingness to set up new channels to which only they would have access and from which only they would earn money. Konon also announced that Jack would be kicked out of his position. In the second part of the material, the guys were harshly attacking Ginger, mentioning his abuse of his wife. This resistance movement lasted only for a week. Under increasing pressure, Konon invites the crew back to the wooden house after he's kidnapped by Cosno and Jack. That is enough to persuade Konon, and Lucas, his last hope, threw in the towel and gave up on trying to free School Street from Ginger's control. From that time onwards, he tries to uproot the crew by official means from time to time. In 2022, Konon took part in an episode of a popular Polish intervention program. The subject of controversy was the care of Konon by the crew of the Milky Man channel. Konon's self-proclaimed guardians were accused of, among other things, financial exploitation, humiliation, and surveillance. They used manipulation, deflection, and lies and got out of this sticky situation practically unscathed. Over the years, many fans have voiced their opinions online. This movement, associated with the anti-latex group, was heavily and rather successfully restricted by the Milky Man crew, via use of tools like copyright claims and even sending notices to the court. This massive anti-informational campaign was and still is relentlessly conducted by the main channel's owners. Another editor appeared on School Street in 2021, a person almost as universally hated by the community as Ginger is. Cosno was friends with Adam Czeczetkowicz, who, as you remember, was the person that first took Konon under his wings. Cosno met Konon back in 2006, but cut contact with him at the same time as Adam. However, in February 2021, he unexpectedly came to help Konon clear snow from the sidewalk in front of the property. In April, with the consent of Ginger, he began to serve as editor. Kosno let himself be known as a hypocrite on every possible level, especially in ecology, which he had nothing to do with, really. He claimed he's a vegan, although he has eaten soup cooked with meat, meat stew, and other animal products. He used to drive a diesel vehicle, and one time he took mushrooms thrown into garbage by a store and proceeded to sell them at a farmer's market. Kosno is a member of the Latexes. He is an aging, debt-ridden, balding man and a schemer who has spent his entire life making money on eco-terrorism, blocking hundreds of local investments. He is a long-time acquaintance of Konon, thanks to which the materials he has recorded often presented more personal, friendly conversations with Almost President, giving an interesting insight into how the Milky Golem behaved on a daily basis. For now, let us leave Konon to himself and focus a bit on the Major, who left the wooden house in March of 2022, thanks to an offer by Arkadiusz, a YouTuber living in Germany. Later that month, a first alcoholite, or drinking alcohol live, takes place in his new flat. From the very beginning of his YouTube career, Major was exploited for his image and money. In order to do that, many abusive techniques were implemented, including giving him alcohol, cutting his sources of income, ridiculing his feelings, and generally treating him like trash, and made possible by, let's not kid ourselves, less than average intelligence of Major himself, degraded further by years of alcohol abuse and inhaling technical material vapors, has left him in a heavily dependent state, of which the abusers eagerly took advantage. The exploitation of Major for his money sees gradual intensification over the years. While in Germany, Major abandoned his longtime love, meaning nitrocellulose solvent, and instead turned solely to godly broth, meaning beer, wine, vodka. Being under its influence most of the time, the videos available showed numerous falls, tripping, vomiting, and other discharges of bodily fluids and unfortunately solids. Besides that, Major, after drinking his godly broth, wasn't much of a company for anything, since in that state, his aggressiveness spiked, which often led to violent altercations. Of course, Major being a weak human being, his body exhausted by years of substance abuse, was usually quickly put down, sometimes to the point of being beaten bloody on stream. After spending some time there and pissing everyone off, Major came running back to Poland in June 2022, and getting the help from Barney, he had a roof over his head where he made a few streams and eased up on alcohol. The plan was for Major to live on his own, without any distractions or flatmates. Unfortunately, it all went downhill from day one, as it became obvious for everyone, both creators and viewers, just how helpless he was in everyday life. And also, while there, someone went ahead and somehow covertly installed control and spying programs, like TeamViewer, on his computer. And in addition to that, he fell for a woman, for whom he bought an engagement ring. As could be expected, both the ring and the woman disappeared the next day. This further humiliation was another hit for Major, who, betrayed and unhappy, fled back to Konon. However, during his absence, another sidekick took his place. Andrew, a former stonemason employed by Niewinski, has taken Major's place. Since the former entities were not mended, Major was given place to sleep, not on his usual couch, but on the kitchen floor. The latex side was angry at Major and considered his escape to Germany as treachery, since it was them who at the time wielded the power in the universe. The mockery of a disliked character was, in some way, given permission from above. A few days later, Major and Andrew ran away together to live in a rented flat in the city. Major's stay there was short and lasted only a few weeks, reason being his return to the synthetic agent sniffing wonderland, which of course is detrimental to any social bonds. It's possible that he thought that he would sit in peace and Andrew would give him water and pills whenever he fell ill, which was practically all the time. So, as you probably already deduced, Major was addicted to inhaling solvent fumes, though he himself often denied that, despite being caught numerous times. Initially, the high is induced by hypoxia of the brain, which has a destructive effect on it. This state must be maintained without interruption, because breaks of even a few minutes significantly weaken the effect. This is why Major's escapades to the forest resulted in such long trips. It is commonly believed that inhalation straight from a plastic bag, as Major did, is the most effective. It is enough for a relatively long effect. Typical effects of inhalation are euphoria and a feeling of relaxation, and later, a feeling of numbness, anesthesia of the face, which causes salivation, derealization, auditory hallucinations, a feeling of warmth, and relaxation of the sphincter. Due to this addiction, Major was unable to exist independently. He had problems reading, walking, speaking, and establishing lasting interpersonal relationships. Generally speaking, he was unable to live his life. This was not only due to inhaling the solvent, and ultimately this substance, in addition to alcohol, contributed to permanently changing his place of residence. So after he was forcibly removed from the apartment, he went back to wandering homeless, until finally he landed back in Conon's house, who graciously allowed Major to stay there. This happened on Major's birthday, and during the course of the day, the tension between the two constantly builded until Conon exploded in a bout of fury. After lasting only 3 hours of his stay, Major couldn't take it anymore and went to the forest. The purpose of his visit to the bosom of nature was obvious, as he was accompanied by small white bottles with warning signs. After that, he took a brief vacation to the lakes with his friend. When he came back, Major visited the wooden house at 9 AM on September 6, 2022. He was supposed to go to the store and buy soup for Conon, but the line was so long, it probably ended in the forest, where Major also ended up, again. The last move of Major's life happened in March of 2023, when he was loaned to a guy called Lanky, and moved into a spare room in his house located at, and this is an eerie coincidence, Forest Street, number 17. During his stay there, he was visited by and drunk with hobos and some of the more brave of his fans. Lanky was freely using Major, urging him to drink on streams. These streams are the bottom of the barrel in Major's debasement, as he falls, vomits, and urinates on multiple occasions during them. Lanky also began to give Major Polish spiritus to drink, which is 95% ethanol. On one occasion, he stuffed a broom handle into Major's mouth for $1. On the other, he laughed when Major, when unconscious, began vomiting. Major lived there for some time, then I guess he was used to it. While there, he got an USB killer in one of the gifts, which fried his laptop. When he got a new one, Conon and Ginger visited him briefly, and Ginger tried to sneakily install spy software on the new computer. But Major, surprisingly, noticed and made a scene. As you remember, the only thing that got destroyed was Major's laptop. His phone was still the one he had previously, with all the control software that Ginger allegedly installed on it. One day, when he was in bad health, he called Barney to take him from Lanky's house. Barney said that he was going to get him, but before he went, he called Major to confirm. At that time, Major's phone blocked his call and he ultimately didn't go. It is assumed that it was Ginger who had noticed the previous call and blocked Barney's call. Barney was one of the people who were actively trying to undermine his exploitation scheme, and as such, Ginger was not fond of him. This event was most likely the last possibility of any help reaching Major, as a few days later, he died. On 19th of June 2023, the universe was shaken to the core. The information about Major's death was first announced and confirmed on his official YouTube channel. The death was sudden, as he was found by Lanky, who confirmed that he woke up at 6 PM and found him dead among the empty bottles. He claimed that Major, quote, drank himself to death probably, end quote, created an outrage among the anti-latex fans, as accusations of deliberate alcoholization and indifference to decaying health were immediately thrown at the quote-unquote caretaker. Now, there are many conspiracy hypotheses about Major's death. The main one, propagated by the anti-latex side of the fandom, is that the people who took care of him, in order to make the video starring him more appealing and dynamic, gave him 190 proof alcohol mixed with the paint thinner, instead of vodka, on multiple occasions. An experiment performed by one of the fans and published on YouTube showed that this chemical, when mixed with such strong alcohol, does not change the way it looks, as it does with water or vodka, and the smell is not as easily detectable. Of course, the more rational explanation would be that his organism, destroyed by years of addiction, hardship and abuse, finally gave out, making him drink almost pure ethanol, and disregarding signs of failing health by his caretakers also contributed to it greatly. I find this explanation more plausible since it's unfathomable for me that someone might have done such a deed. But who knows, this universe has a habit of surprising you in the most disgusting ways possible. The other hypothesis states that Major died earlier, during a drinking session, and the fact that the information was relayed so late was caused by Lanky removing some unspecified evidence. Regardless, no charges were pressed, and no one was held accountable for Major's death. Let us go back to Conon, who, unlike Major, never changed his abode. At least, not until it was too late. During this time, Conon's health and mobility deteriorated significantly. His diabetes worsened due to the excessive amounts of milk, sweets and soda, which, despite knowledge about his terrible health, were still being supplied by the crew and consumed by him. Even though Conon barely had the strength to move, Ginger ordered the gate to his house shut by chains. Those chains were only removed by the police after some time. At this time, a motion was filed to put Conon in a care establishment. However, Ginger and his crew did everything to make them be dismissed. They claimed they were taking care of Conon, that they fed him, clothed him, and renovated his house. This was obviously not even half of the truth, more like 10% of it, but the court unfortunately believed them. Free to continue their money-making scheme, though now with Conon alone, the content has shifted once again in its nature. What I mean is that the crew saw that the videos in which Conon has the most emotional outbursts enjoy the greatest viewership, and so inducing such responses became a new standard. They would read letters from viewers to Conon, although most viewers suspect that they wrote them themselves. In those letters, Conon's humiliated, accused of various atrocities, or compared to a dirty animal. Conon, being naive as he was, believed and reacted to all of them, sometimes with rage, sometimes with tears. More gifts than ever before began to contain degrading items, feces, urine, or general trash like a dead rat, and even his parents' ashes. Allegedly, of course. Conon burst into tears and lamented profusely as he held cans of dirt in his hands, but nobody explained to him that this was undoubtedly a fake. At this time, the editors were still Jack of Dog Aaron and Cosno, and they, as well as Ginger, were absolutely conscious of what they were doing, and many of those disgusting moments were most likely orchestrated by them. There is even evidence showing that Ginger told Jack to punch Conon if he didn't behave. That's right, they agreed to punch an older, mentally handicapped and disturbed man if he didn't do what he was told. However, they probably never needed to go so far, as their standard tactic of threatening Conon was enough to ensure his cooperation. As for what threats were used, well, whenever Conon acted up, they said that they wouldn't come visit him, and that he would have to be alone, without food and drink, and in winter also in the cold. Terrified, Conon obeyed their every wish. And how much money did he earn for such debasement? At this time, the Milky Man channel had nearly 200,000 subscribers. Besides the money from ads, there were also donations, which were being sent in large amounts on every stream. During the best months, the channel brought in as much as $25,000 after tax. So at least Conon had money, right? Well, no. As you remember, all money matters were regulated by Ginger's company, and Conon wasn't even his employee. He had no insurance and no salary, and not an official one at least. To keep Conon in the dark, Ginger handed him $100 a week. That was not even 2% of the earnings, and it was most of the costs of running this show. The rest was buying milk and food. The remaining money was free to share between mainly Ginger, then his wife, Cosno and Jack. How's that for profit? Ginger claimed that he didn't employ Conon because they had a contract regarding the use of Conon's image. That's why he had no insurance, and his share was so abysmally low. although that also shows how much Ginger cared about Conan. One day, Conan called him to come over and bring him something to drink, because as he said, he was dying of thirst. What did Ginger say? He said, quote, "Die then," end quote. And he was smart enough to record it and put it on the internet, so that everyone could see who he really is. The fans of the universe weren't without fault either. Ginger may not have settled money matters with Conan fairly, he may not have cared for Conan to have a decent standard of living, and disregarded the obvious health issues. That's one matter. Another matter entirely is that the videos where he humiliates and debases a dirty and sick old man have been the most popular ones. When the only thing on screen was Conan talking, the views were much less, and the comments consisted mainly of complaints about the boring content. Conan's torment didn't end there. One day someone dug up a grave in his garden and they told Conan it was for him. On 2 separate occasions he was nailed a tombstone with his name on it. Conan many times said that he was scared of Ginger and his crew, but nobody could do anything. Well, I guess they could do something, but nobody decided to actually take action and take him away from there. This cycle of torture and humiliation ended quite predictably. In late 2024, right after Christmas, Conan was finally placed in a hospital ward. His state was absolutely pitiful. Extreme malnourishment coupled with raging diabetes, rotting bedsore, diabetic foot, pneumonia, and a suspicion of stroke. On 30th of December, he needed to be resuscitated. Conan was intentionally put into a pharmacological coma and was being given intravenous antibiotics, which have allegedly started to work. After resuscitation, no changes in his brain were found, but there is no certainty as to the impact of this situation on Conan's consciousness. During Conan's stay in the hospital, Kosno visited his house. After that, he was accused of taking the items from there to keep or maybe sell later. In mid-January, the info broke that Conan was in serious condition, as the medics weren't able to fully wake him up from the coma, and he had trouble breathing by himself. This changes at the end of the month, where on Jack's video, Conan can be seen conscious and breathing through a tracheotomy hole. His state, however, didn't improve after that. On the contrary, his pulmonary problems worsened, and on 17th of February, he's moved into hospice care. We do not know what is going to happen, but palliative care is rarely good news. Of course, the current state of Conan is not a detriment for the Milky Man crew. The channel still sees uploads of the previously recorded videos. It's truly a bizarre experience to watch silly videos of a man who's currently fighting for his life. Many fans claim that locking Conan in his wooden house and isolating him from people outside had a huge impact on his current vegetative state of health. In addition, viewers mention the strengthening of his tendency for paranoid thinking by the notorious exploitation of his weakest point, that is, deliberately arousing fear of something he fears the most: loneliness and abandonment. Turning him into a monkey in a cage is considered by many, as well as yours truly, as an act of criminal human exploitation, lauded by those who found the tragic misfortune of a fellow man entertaining. As I was finishing the script for this video, a tragic message confirmed what I've been suspecting for the past month. On the 6th of March 2025, Krzysztof Kononowicz passed away while being completely alone in hospice care. While with him leaving the mortal plane, the universe of School Street 17 has reached its finish line, the story doesn't end yet. In the near future, we will see the conclusion of the fate of those whose exceptional lack of care and mortifying avarice has led to this sad end. I will keep my eye on the case, and when it is resolved, I will make another video informing you what has happened with everyone involved in Conan's debasement. While Krzysztof Kononowicz was not a saint, he was a poor, mistreated and ridiculed human being for most of his life. And now, having reached the bottom of human dignity, he's finally free from his torment. Rest in peace. On another note, a weird coincidence is related to Conan's date of death. As I mentioned before, 2 of the many presents from viewers that were shown on the channel included fake tombstones. One of them was delivered in 2023, and the date of death written on it was 5th of March 2024. The second one came a year later, and this time showed 5th of March 2025 as the date of death. As you remember, Conan died on 6th of March. and many viewers felt uneasy after the information about Konon's death became public due to how close the prediction landed, and some say it was dead on, since he was found and proclaimed dead at 5:10 in the morning, as the hospice personnel were doing morning rounds, making it possible that he indeed died on the 5th. The community is confused about the weirdly specific prophecy, and many have claimed it's a sign we live in the Matrix, or that everything in the School Street 17 universe is scripted. Since many of the fans find this fact creepy, it was incorporated into the universe as the new paranormal plot of the show. As for myself, I did my best to bring you only verified and publicly available info. When the information couldn't be verified, I clearly indicated it as such, so I hope this material will not be censored, hidden, unmonetized, or copyright appealed. Although this case is extremely complex and pretty much only known in its country of origin, I believe that increasing social awareness of such situations might help us limit such practices wherever they appear. And let's not kid ourselves, similar things happen every day, in every country. So please be vigilant and react if you suspect you're witness to human exploitation. All the main people who made the School Street 17 universe into what it is today have already passed. Yet the story is not finished. Those who have allegedly exploited those poor souls and milked them for everything they could give and more should be, in my opinion, investigated, and the truth should be brought to the light. This case shows a strange similarity to the story about the goose that laid golden eggs. When it comes to my opinion about the story I just presented, I personally do not understand the appeal of watching impaired people degrading themselves for entertainment, even less when they're deliberately kept on the border of extreme poverty and total fuckery. There are no black and white characters in this artificially created universe, but I believe that everyone who watches and supports these kinds of shows do add their own 2 cents to digging a grave, and in many cases, more than one. Sadly, only when tragedy strikes do people really wake up. And so we arrived at the end of this video. Huge thank you to all of you for watching. I'm just starting with my channel and any support from you is greatly appreciated, so please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the content. And to everyone still listening, a separate heartfelt thanks. I spent the last few weeks researching, writing, recording and editing this video, and it was, as you can expect, not a pleasant job, due to the nature of the information. So thank you again for watching it all. I already have great ideas for the next videos, and hopefully they are more light-hearted than this one. Though, as you may suspect, I do not shy from such heavy topics, and this video is a good example of that. I look forward to hearing your opinions in the comments, and I will do my best to read them all. If you have suggestions about absurd cases which I should cover, let me know in the comments as well. I wish you all the best, and see you in the next video.